Hi everyone, I'm Professor Larkin, and today we're going to talk about organizational scope and horizontal diversification. We've already learned what organizations are, why they exist, and what their purpose is. Today we're going to talk about two fundamental questions that all organizations need to think carefully about. The first is the scope of their organization. What that means is, what activities should we carry out internally versus what activities should we let other firms or other individuals do outside of our firm and simply transact with those people via the market? The second question is around, once we've decided our scope, how can we operate our firm at the decided scope most efficiently? How can we set up systems and processes that allow us to coordinate resources in the most efficient way? As an entrepreneur, these two questions are very critically important. If you try to do too much in-house, you'll find yourself quickly swamped. You're just not big enough to do too much internally. And if you don't have strong processes within your organization that coordinate activities, you'll find that your organization will be inefficient and outcompeted. And so firms not only need to have smart and innovative ideas, but need to think carefully about what are we going to do and how are we going to ensure that we operate efficiently. Very critical questions for new businesses. Today we're going to talk about organizational scope. And the first dimension of organizational scope is around horizontal scope. What we mean specifically is that an organization almost always starts by focusing on a single product in a single market. But very quickly, even young organizations find that, hey, we could expand into new markets or build new products with similar technology. Should we incur the cost to make that expansion, or should we stay focused within our existing niche? Should we add those products B and C or stay focused on product A? That's known as horizontal diversification. What products and services should we offer? How broad should we think about setting up our company? Now, a second dimension is vertical. Every company buys inputs from the market, and then it transforms them. Some companies only buy raw materials. Others buy raw materials that have been already transformed by other suppliers. How much of that transformation should we do ourselves? How much should we rely on other firms that are providing inputs that already have some value added? This is known as vertical integration. What input should we buy from our organizations, and which input should we decide we're going to undertake the process of transforming them ourselves? How deep do we integrate ourselves vertically within our value chain? Today's discussion is going to be on question one around horizontal diversification and how broad of an organization do you want? Both of these questions rely on a fundamental premise, which is unless there's a good reason to undertake an activity within your firm, you want to rely on the market. The market is very efficient in general. And if you expand the scope of your organization, there's inevitable costs that are incurred, coordination, bureaucracy. Organizations do not operate freely. They carry costs with them and inefficiencies. An increase in organizational scope is costly, and therefore you must see a gain in the competitive advantage of the organization. You must see some bump in willingness to pay. You must see some synergy from expanding the scope of your organization. We're going to talk later about what this term synergy means specifically. Some people think that diversification makes sense because it spreads risk. But this is misguided. Shareholders, the ultimate owners of a firm, can diversify as much or as little as they would like by buying shares in another company. It's very, very low cost to go out and buy stock in an industry where you don't currently operate. And so if you want to diversify your own personal risk, go out and use the stock market to buy shares. Don't use your business to do it because it's much more costly to set up a new business than it is to spend $10 to buy some shares in a company. So shareholders, the ultimate owners of a firm, can diversify for free. So the central issue that we're going to address in these videos is how the expansion of the scope of the organization adds value to the business. And this is a very pertinent question because 90% of diversification fails according to some very influential academic research. In fact, investment bankers and finance companies go to firms that are diversified and say, you're destroying value. You should spin these companies off. There's been a lot of spin-offs in the market in the last 10 years because it's very, very costly to diversify. But sometimes, that 10% of the time, it can be very value adding. And we want to understand, when does diversification make sense? Now I'll tell you about a company and its experience with diversification in the 70s and 80s that shows some of the pitfalls of expanding into different business lines. And this company is called General Mills. You may not know the company, it's based in the US, but you likely know its main products, which is breakfast cereal. Cereals that families enjoy eating together in the morning. Trix, Cocoa Puffs, Lucky Charms. General Mills was very successful in the cereal business and had very well-known brands, and it thought, we understand families, we understand what homemakers need and want, and let's get into products that are needed and desired by homemakers. Established a new strategy to not just be a breakfast cereal company, but to be a company that meets the needs and wants of homemakers. And this led them to buy a bunch of businesses that did meet the needs and wants of homemakers. Successful brands like Lacoste, which makes clothes. Red Lobster, which is the leading seafood restaurant in the US. Play-Doh, which children love to play with. Monopoly, a very well-known board game that families really enjoy. Jewelry, school supplies. These are all products that homemakers need. So it might seem like General Mills diversification made a lot of sense to buy all of these very established, successful brands. Well, let me tell you what happened 20, 30 years later. Financial analysts found that these brands were actually underperforming their competitors. And General Mills ended up selling all of these businesses that we see, except the breakfast cereals, off to the market. In most cases, actually taking a loss. These forays into new industries were unsuccessful, and they didn't work for General Mills. Why? Well, that's the million-dollar question. And we're going to turn to why General Mills' strategy with diversification didn't make sense, and ask, in what cases does diversification actually make sense? So in order to get insight into this question, we're going to start thinking about organizations not just as a means by which you can coordinate resources, but as a means by which you can increase the value of resources that an organization owns or controls. Because organizations exist not just to coordinate resources, but also to extract as much value as possible from those resources. And that's what horizontal diversification is all about. It's about increasing the value of resources owned by an organization. Let's take a case study, almost the anti-General Mills, of a company that is in a bunch of diversified industries, but has been very successful with this diversification. And that company is Disney. I'm sure you've all heard of Disney. It owns animation studios, it owns theme parks, it owns retail stores, it owns cruise ships. You can get on a Disney ship. It owns hotels, TV network. It owns movie studios. It's all over the map, just like General Mills was. But unlike General Mills, it's been very, very successful with most of its diversification initiatives. Why is that? Well, it comes down to Disney's most valuable resource. What is Disney's most valuable resource, you might ask? Well, it actually has 3 resources which are the most valuable. And I'll write them down for you because there's 3 things you have to keep in mind when you think about Disney and value. You have a circle, and then a second circle, and a third circle. Disney's most valuable resource is Mickey Mouse. That's it. It's as simple as that. A little drawing explains why Disney is so valuable and why Disney has successfully diversified into so many industries. How can a drawing be so valuable? Let's spend a minute and think about what makes resources valuable and apply those learnings to Mickey Mouse. The first factor that makes resources valuable is the appropriability of the resource. Appropriate means to take. And so if you can take value from the resource, that means that the appropriability of that resource is higher. How high is the appropriability of Mickey Mouse? Well, it's so appropriable, Disney can take all the value from that resource that we're not even allowed to put Mickey Mouse in this slide presentation, because if we did so, we'd have to pay a big fee to Disney. And so we're just going to use these 3 circles for Mickey Mouse instead. It's a very, very appropriable resource. In fact, compare Mickey Mouse, which appears in a lot of movies and TV programs, to someone else who appears in a lot of movies and TV programs. Miley Cyrus. If you don't know her, she was a very well-known child actress that appeared on the Disney Network in a very successful set of TV shows and movies called Hannah Montana. Why is Mickey Mouse, the value that Mickey Mouse creates, more appropriable than the value that Miley Cyrus creates? Well, Warren Buffett, who's a very well-known investor and one of the sharpest business minds in the world, made a very telling quote about Mickey Mouse. He said, Mickey Mouse doesn't have an agent. If a Mickey Mouse movie is very popular, Disney can take all of the value of that movie for itself. If Miley Cyrus or Tom Cruise or Angelina Jolie has a successful movie, they're going to take a lot of that value. And then in the next movie, they're going to ask for even a higher salary through their agent. Mickey Mouse doesn't ever ask for a higher salary. He's happy to work for free. All of the value is appropriable to Disney. A second factor which makes resources more valuable is the ability of the organization to exert control over the resource, to make it do what it wants. Now, Mickey Mouse is an animated character, so you can make him do whatever you'd like. He will do whatever you ask him to do and look exactly as you like him to look. How about Miley Cyrus? Well, a lot of you probably know what Miley Cyrus looks like today. She's changed her look completely. And Disney doesn't have any control over the way Miley Cyrus looks today. And Disney may not like the way that Miley Cyrus looks because it may not be compatible with its brand. But Mickey Mouse will look however Disney wants. A resource which is more controllable is more valuable. Third factor that makes resources valuable is durability, and that just means the lifespan of the resource. How long does it last? If you buy a new piece of capital equipment, a new factory, eventually it's going to get old and break down. If you hire somebody, well, they may quit in a few years. And unfortunately, all of us as human resources, our lifespan is not infinite. Mickey Mouse lasts forever. Well, at least as long as Disney has the trademark. In fact, this picture from the 1920s is the original Mickey Mouse. It's not even Mickey Mouse, it's Oswald the Friendly Rabbit, the very first cartoon that Walt Disney drew. And you can see it looks just like Mickey Mouse because it is Mickey Mouse. Walt Disney lost the trademark to Oswald. A business partner stole it from him, and so he created Mickey Mouse. But Mickey Mouse is Mickey Mouse. And if you look at Mickey today versus Mickey back in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, he's looked practically the same. It's just a very, very durable resource. The longer a resource lasts, the more durable it is, the more valuable it is. The fourth factor that makes a resource valuable is inimitability, another one of those big words that we can unpack. Imitate means to copy, and if something is inimitable, it can't be copied. It's like the Mona Lisa. You could try and recreate it, but it just can't be imitated. It's inimitable. And just as the Mona Lisa is timeless and can't be imitated, so is Mickey Mouse. It's very impossible for someone to build up as much brand presence as Mickey Mouse has. Let me tell you a story that shows how strong Mickey Mouse's brand is. 20% of Disneyland guests are actually people above 65 who are going there by themselves or with their spouse. They aren't going with their family. It's not just someplace for kids. Why do retirees, people who have already retired, why are they going without kids? Well, they want to relive their childhood. They're remembering back 40, 50, 60 years ago. And they love seeing little kids having fun. It makes everybody happy to see other happy people. No other theme park can recreate that. It's inimitable. And a lot of that value comes from the experience through the characters. So resources are valuable as you can appropriate more value, if you have a higher degree of control, as they're more durable, and as they're less likely to be imitated, if they have high inimitability. This is how valuable Mickey Mouse is. He has his own profit and loss statement within Disney. They actually account for not only Mickey, but all of their characters, how profitable they are. And just as we would have to pay Disney if we used an image of Mickey Mouse in this presentation, if a Disney cartoonist draws a cartoon with Mickey Mouse, or they design a new backpack or a new pad of paper with Mickey's image, the Disney Mickey Mouse account actually gets a credit within the organization. Mickey has its own profit and loss statement, and it is the most profitable character within the Disney stable by far. It just goes to show how valuable Mickey Mouse is. So now that we've understood what makes resources valuable, let's take it back to our fundamental question, which is the scope of the firm. Let's think about what businesses should Disney choose to enter, given that it has this strong capability to create characters like Mickey Mouse, which are the company's most valuable resource. Well, originally Disney was an animation studio that made movies and short films. They had these valuable resources in the characters, and they made timeless movies, Snow White, Cinderella, the original Mickey Mouse movies that people loved at the time and still love today. This has led Disney to be very profitable within the animation business, making movies and short films. And Walt Disney, being the smart businessman that he was, plowed a lot of those profits back into the best animators and the best technology to create characters. But he did something else. He said, why don't we take our valuable resource, the animated characters like Mickey Mouse, and let's expand into the theme parks. Let's build Disneyland and Disney World. Why does it make sense to use the animated characters in the theme park? Well, families visit the theme parks and they have a great experience at the theme parks because the characters are there. It makes the theme parks unique. If you asked 100 people to name the leading theme park in the world, I bet 100 of them would say Disneyland or Disney World, because it's by far the most unique theme park out there because of the great experience you have, because of the characters. And that makes their theme parks very profitable. Is that enough to justify horizontal diversification? Does that mean it makes sense for Disneyland to expand into the theme parks? Not that by itself. What happens when kids go to the theme park or adults go to the theme park? Well, I know because we babysit my niece a lot. My niece is 5 years old. We just took her to Disneyland. Her favorite movie is The Lion King, which probably a lot of you have seen, and she got to interact with the different Lion King characters there at the park. As soon as we got home, she said, I want to watch the movie again. The theme park makes the movies more timeless and more valuable. And because of that, the valuable resource of the animated characters is stronger. Disney deciding to take Mickey Mouse from the animation studio to the theme park not only made the theme parks valuable, it made the animation studio more valuable. And that is what a synergy is. A synergy, horizontal diversification, makes sense when moving into a new business makes your valuable resource more valuable. You shouldn't think about a synergy in terms of extracting the value of your valuable resource in a new business. It's about making your existing business, your existing resource, even stronger. And so every move that Disney has made has been not about leveraging the value of Mickey, but making Mickey himself a stronger resource for Disney. And that's why General Mills failed. If you think back to the cereal company, moving into Play-Doh or moving into restaurants didn't make cereal a more valuable resource. They weren't serving Lucky Charms at the Red Lobster restaurants. There wasn't any feedback loop that made their core resource more valuable. And that meant that all it was doing was incurring a lot of costs with no benefit back to its core resource. It's much better for the market to manage Red Lobster and Play-Doh and let General Mills stay focused on its key resource. You only want to horizontally diversify when there's a synergy. And a synergy means leveraging your valuable resource in a way that makes the new business more profitable, but also it increases the value of the resource for your core business. You need to see that bump in your core business. Like you see with this duck boat. This is a boat that tourists like to ride on that can go on both land and water. And that dual capability makes the vehicle itself more valuable. Synergy is about making your core resource valuable by giving the resource in multiple businesses. Not just making the new business profitable, making your old business profitable as well. Walt Disney was the first person to understand synergies. And in fact, he drew this map way back in the 1950s. This is a little bit of a later version, but this map is extremely well known. And it shows Disney's core business, which is its animation, and all of its businesses that it expanded to afterwards. TV, the theme parks, the comic strips, and shows all of those feedback loops. And what's fascinating about this chart is that Walt Disney understood that taking the animated characters, taking Mickey Mouse into different businesses did increase the value of those businesses. You see the positive arrows going out, but you see just as many positive arrows coming back in. Synergies are about increasing the value of your core, not increasing the value of the outside businesses. To summarize what we've learned today, horizontal diversification is about increasing the value of key resources. Resources are valuable as you can appropriate more valuable from them, as you can control them, as they are more durable, which means they live longer, and as they are less susceptible to imitation, as their inimitability is higher. And you should expand the scope of your firm only when doing so increases the value of your key resource. For entrepreneurs, the question of when to expand is a really fundamental one, particularly entrepreneurs that have technical skills or that control a key resource in the market. What entrepreneurs find is they're often approached by companies saying, hey, you can use your technology in a new product line, and it's a free option for you to do that. You should go out and use your technology in this new market, and it'll be a great source of extra revenue for you. You need to remember that every time you expand into a new market, you're incurring costs. And if that expansion doesn't increase the value of your key technology, you want to be very, very careful about doing that. So moving forward, we're going to talk about other types of expansion and diversification and consider other ways you can expand or contract your firm's boundaries.